So,
Oh, sorry.
David, today we're talking. Wow, you just interrupted me. I see how it is. Anyways, today we're talking about Phineas and Ferb, David. And so I think this is obviously something that you and me grew. Oh, yeah, it is obviously something you and me grew up with. I think both something that you and me both loved growing up.
Mm.
So give me your take on Phineas and Ferb. Because I feel like it's just something that like everyone knows about. You know, like obviously we can go into like a general recap of like how episodes are formulated, but like they're mostly the same, and most everyone knows what at least has seen some kind of Phineas and Ferb. So, what's your thoughts on Phineas and Ferb and like
Oh yeah.
stuff like
So,
that?
like I said, Phineas and Ferb growing up was like that for at least when we were watching Disney Channel, that was one of the best show. That was definitely the best animated
Mm-hmm.
show and one of the best shows on Disney Channel. Um, and like I know it's a very like simple idea for a TV show, but it really is like genius. Like because when you think about it, really the plot of every episode is the exact same, but sometimes somehow it
Mm-hmm.
all feels like fresh and new, and it's the show like just from a critical standpoint, it's extremely well made for what it is.
Yeah, I saw a thing earlier today. It was talking about the show, and it was like Phineas and Ferb is extremely formulaic. Like it has a formula for every single episode,
Mm.
and it's the exact same one from the beginning to the end. And it's like, and that's why it succeeded because it didn't have to really do anything extraordinarily new or anything like that.
Buckle up, y'all. We might be here a while.
So my computer crashed, but we're back now. What I was saying before I probably got rudely interrupted, and surprisingly not by David this time, but anyways, um, was that the, Feast and Ferb is not it's very formulaic. Like it has formula to the way that the videos go or the movies go. Get it right. To the way that the episodes go, and so they don't have to do anything like different, like they don't have to one up themselves after every episode, it could just, the first episode, second episode, third, it's all the same, just slight little tweaks here and there, and every once in a while they'd put a random new twist to it.
Mm.
And like I think that's one reason why the show is so good and why like even now it has so much rewatch value, you know, like um they've done a lot of they did the after the series they did the second dimension movie. I think they've done a couple others, but I know that they did one more recently with Candace or whatever. But we've talked about with the previous shows that we've talked about like their endings. Well, this doesn't really have an ending to it, and it's kind of nice that because you can just watch through them. You don't really have, there's not like an overarching story to
Well,
it.
the
That's a nice
the
thing about it too.
the closest thing Phineas and Ferb has to an ending. I know it's kind of weird. We normally talk about the ending of a show first. A lot of times we do, but the ending of the closest thing to an ending of Phineas and Ferb is like the is either second to last or third to last episode, Act Your Age, which is when they
Hmm.
jumps in the future when um I think pretty much the main plot of the episode is Phineas trying to decide where he's going to go to college.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's the closest thing the show has to a finale.
Yeah. And like it does like evoke those like finale feelings, but like for the most part like the show is the show.
Mm-hmm.
It's I mean it's a kid show. Kid shows aren't really supposed to have endings. They're not structured the same way. But like for us now, like we watched it in when it was coming out. Like I remember watching new episodes on Disney. Um, but like now watching back on it, it's still good. It still holds up, and it's like You don't have to start with episode one and watch through. You can just kind of it's a happy show. A couple months ago, or might have been not long after me and Sarah first got married. For whatever reason, we decided to watch a horror movie. Um, and it was a lot. I watch a couple horror, like I watch a couple like different horror genres. Like I like the It movie. I watched the first one. I haven't seen the second one yet. That's fine. Like gory stuff like that. I don't really care as much about that. Like I can watch those. When it comes to like demonic stuff, I tend to stay away from that. Well, we started watching this movie off of the recommendation of someone else. Turns out we were watching the wrong movie. It was pretty good, but it was really, really scary. And so after we got done watching the movie, like phew, the whole time I was freaking out. I was a little girl. I'm not even gonna lie about that. Sarah was watching more of it than I was. I was hiding behind the pillows. But after we got done watching that, we turned on Phineas and Ferb because we were like, we need to flush out this like scary sensation. And we just picked a random couple episodes that we liked, and we watched them. And you know what? I actually fell asleep that night.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier the formula of the show. I want to talk a little more about that too, because the
Hmm.
show definitely has a like you said, it definitely is very formulaic, but like I said, it's kind of a genius thing too, because like, and I think Dan Povenmire has even talked about this on his TikTok. He does TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all that kind of stuff. But he's even talked about that before. He does the formula. It's like because well, let me back up a little bit before I get into that. So a lot of people, when he pitched his show, said a show like that would never work.
Didn't he start pitching it back in like the early '90s or something like that?
Yes, Dan
Hmm.
Dan Povenmire and Jeff Swampy Marsh. Swampy is his nickname. So Dan and Swampy
Hmm.
came up with this show in the
Swats in
90s.
quotes. Hmm.
Yeah, but they came up with the show in the 90s, and this show first aired in 2007. Was it?
7 or
Yeah,
8 sounds familiar.
2007. So like it really, it took like 15 years to even get this show on the air. And mind you too,
Hmm.
Dan worked for Nickelodeon for a lot of this time. He actually worked on SpongeBob. So Nickelodeon would
Yeah.
not air this show because he probably would have pitched. I don't know this for sure, but he probably pitched it to Nickelodeon first because he worked for Nickelodeon.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, he finally got Disney to actually pick up and run this show, and you know it's what we have now.
Instant
But
classic.
one of the reasons a lot of these studios rejected the show is because the formula was so simple and was so repetitive. And
Hmm.
one of the main things is that with Phineas and Ferb, their whole plot. So in every episode, there's an A plot, a B plot, and a C plot. So the A plot is whatever Phineas and Ferb are doing, which
Hmm.
in all reality, like, is not the most interesting part of the show.
Yeah.
Because, whatever Phineas and Ferb are doing, like, they're gonna succeed at it, they're gonna do whatever. But the B plot and C plot are the more interesting parts of the show. Because the B plot is pretty much, whatever Candace is doing to try to bust Phineas and Ferb. And, she's the one that has all of the, you know, ups and downs and, hard time getting to where, because she never actually succeeds. And then, of course, the
Yeah.
C plot is, Doofenshmirtz and Perry.
Hmm.
Which, for a lot of the show, let's be honest, that's what we watch the show for.
Yeah. Although not as much as they were hoping when they came out with the whatever they were called, like the file episodes or whatever, like the last
The
couple
Alka
ones that they
Files.
did after the stop,
Yeah.
the Alka
So,
Files. I never really could
so
get onto those, and a lot of it was like not because it wasn't like intriguing enough with Doofenshmirtz and Perry. It was more just like they were missing something, and it's because I think they're more of a B plot than anything else. Like they're not as good as an A plot.
Mm. And see, that's the thing. All the parts of the show need all the others to tick, and
Hmm.
it's a clock. It basically like each episode is basically just a clock. Like all the
Hmm.
parts fit together perfectly. Like, you know, while the whatever the boys are doing may not necessarily directly involve with whatever Doofenshmirtz or Perry are doing. Sometimes it does cross over. Sometimes, or most of the time it
Hmm.
doesn't. But normally, whatever Doofenshmirtz ends up building, whatever contraption he ends up building, normally directly influences the A plot, because that's normally what
Yeah.
gets rid of whatever the boys do, and that
Yeah.
So it's like I said, it's a clock. It's really fine tuned, and that's kind of the
Hmm.
genius of it, because like you can plug in all sorts of different scenarios and whatever into this show, into the plot of the show. Like, heck, they did an episode, like a prehistoric episode. They had an episode in ancient
Hmm.
China. Like, they can plug whatever setting, whatever they want into this episode, and it works. Now, of
Yeah.
course, they do have a few episodes where they break this kind of cycle, like all the specials and the
Hmm.
crossovers. Of course, they have episodes that kind of break this, but for the most part, the majority of this show is, like I said, it's just this like clockwork. It just works.
Hmm. And even like you're saying, episodes that break the formula. I think about the one where they either watch Perry all day, I think is what they end up doing, and you get Planty the potted plant, you know, but it still
I
bounces
just watched
back and
that one
forth.
earlier.
It still like bounces back and forth, and like you know, yeah, the boys aren't building anything, and in all reality, like that plot's not as that's not interesting what they're doing. They're watching Perry or whatever, right? Like you said, you just watched this. They're watching Perry, right?
No, so that's the episode with the rabbit, or the first episode with the rabbit. And so
Is
Perry
it?
is,
Oh.
yeah, yeah. So Perry's in the is there the whole time at the house trying to prevent the rabbit from getting into the
Okay.
lair. Yeah.
Now I remember it. Now I remember it.
Also, can
Yeah,
we
but
just
like
talk?
there's different things like that that do break the formula, but like it still
Mm,
fits, it still works. It's because it's how it's done. And like you were saying earlier, not to get too off topic of whatever you wanted to get to, but like you were saying earlier with how like when Dan pitched it to people, they were like, no, that will never work. The formula is too basic. It's funny how oftentimes how the one thing that people who don't believe in something they're like, hey, this one thing is why it doesn't work. Oftentimes, that's the reason that it succeeds. So, like,
because
and it blows up a lot of times.
well, that's what makes the show different is its formula,
Hmm.
and
That's usually
that's
that's
why.
usually also yeah, that's also usually why like when someone points out something and says, hey, this is why it's not going to work. It's because it's different. And it's because it's not proven. And whenever it someone actually ends up saying taking some believes in it, then you get an amazing show like this. It's a lot of
Mm,
times like risks that, yeah, risks sometimes don't work out, but this one sure did, and we are
mm,
happy for it. So, anyways,
yeah.
go back to what you were saying.
Well, you mentioned Planty the potted plant, and I just want to talk about the fact that like Doofenshmirtz in that episode thwarted himself
Hmm.
because in all reality, like I mean, and there's some instances where Perry being there actually does prevent Doofenshmirtz from doing something, but like a lot of
Hmm.
cases, I wonder just how often Doofenshmirtz actually does like just by
Yeah.
himself would just fail.
Well, speaking of this, speaking of Doofenshmirtz, yeah, have you seen the film theory episode about Doofenshmirtz?
I don't think so. Well, what is that? Or what is Matt Pat's theory on this?
Base, yeah. So basically, so yes, I watched two videos earlier today that and about Phineas and Ferb, both of which had to do with Doctor Doofenshmirtz. The first one is about the magnet or whatever, which that one's a great one to watch. But basically, talking about how Doofenshmirtz was ahead of his time in inventing that magnet in the first episode that was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to rotate the Earth, which obviously wouldn't have worked. But for anyone who's interested, go look up Film Theory on YouTube. Go watch his videos. He's great. He does a lot of good stuff. All his channels are great. But the video I'm talking about, in this video, he talks about how Doofenshmirtz. So it's revealed at some point in time that Doofenshmirtz actually was an agent of uh, 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 what's the organization without a cool acronym? Alka?
Alka. Alka, yeah.
Alka? Okay. He was once an agent of Alka because he was raised by ocelots, which means that technically he's an animal, I guess. So it was revealed that that was the case. But then you go back to there's another episode where it talks about where he does become an agent or whatever, and all the problems he causes for the agency. Do you remember that episode where
Yep.
he's an agent, or for whatever reason he comes in, and Major Monogram makes a comment: "You do more harm on our side than you ever did on normally." So MatPat's theory is that Doofenshmirtz is basically like Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda. Whoops.
What?
No. That's not his theory. His theory is that he is basically Alka. They're science and research division. Whoa. FBI radar list. Anyways. Anyways, Phineas and Ferb. That's all we're talking about here. Phineas and Ferb. But anyways, he says that they're basically the science and research division, because apparently in Perry's hat is like a scanning device that can scan all of Doofenshmirtz's devices, and they rebuild them. So like think back to Across the Second Dimension. At the end of it, they get their brain wiped. Well, who built the brain inator? It was Doofenshmirtz's. And so, and also they have the ability to put people in prison too, because think about that episode with that the big villain or whatever that Perry is called off of Doofenshmirtz to go fight him.
The regurgitator.
I was thinking that was his name, but I was like, I've already slipped up once. I don't need to do it twice. But anyways, so they have episode with him. Well, he ends up in prison. Also, or some of the episodes with like Love Muffin and all, they end up in prison too. So it's like they have the capability of going or putting people in prison. They never do it to Doofenshmirtz. Why? Well, because he's not causing any harm, except to himself. But he's not causing any harm, and so. And they can use him because he's a smart guy. He can build things. He just doesn't really know how to use his inventions. So they use him to build equipment at the cost of his own self. And all they have to pay for this research division is sending Perry the Platypus out there to scan everything. So that's his theory. It's obviously put together a lot better in the video, and he does not name terrorist groups in it. So, But we can move past that real quick because we do not need to stay on that topic. But that was basically the theory, and it's kind of a compelling theory too, because like Doofenshmirtz is like pretty harmless. They let him roam free, but he's priority one most of the time. For like Perry's one of the best agents, and what is he doing? He's stopping Doofenshmirtz.
Yeah, not the Doofenshmirtz actually does much, because like even in some cases where like he lets his Perry in some cases has actually let Doofenshmirtz like go ahead with his plan, and he fails spectacularly.
It's usually like, oh, you think this is gonna work? Go ahead, let me watch you fail spectacularly. It's like usually done in that way. It's funny, obviously, but and I mean, yeah, you're not gonna have that big of bad of a villain in it, but. Yeah, he's never going to rule the world or the tri-state area.
That's the thing. Like, all of Doofenshmirtz's innators work. Whether or not they do their intended function, that's beside the point. Yeah. But they do something.
Was it Doofenshmirtz, or was it the alternate Doofenshmirtz in the cross second dimension one that made the robots that all had the self destruct button on the bottom? That was a second dimension one, right?
No, I think that was Doofenshmirtz,
That was
the
Doofenshmirtz.
normal one.
Okay, but yeah, like the robots worked. They started marching. Well, they only took one step because there's a button on the bottom. So,
Also,
which I don't know
if
why.
you
I don't know why he keeps adding those in. Like, just don't add them.
that that the whole self-destruct button thing is what inevitably destroys most of his inventions.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and he has to add them in. He has to
Yeah.
for whatever reason.
I think in the cross second dimension, I think the evil Doofenshmirtz even mentions that like why do you do that?
Yeah.
You know.
I was thinking about it today, and it was obviously too late. But I was like, I really should watch the second dimension before we talk about Phineas and Ferb, because like I've watched the rest of them enough to know, general plots of if we were to talk about anything in specific. But it's like the second dimension, it's been so long since I've seen it. Like I know the generic plot, but there might be like little things here and there that I might end up missing. But
Yeah,
it's still
I
a good
didn't watch
movie.
it. Yeah, I didn't watch it either, but yeah, it is. It also has a very like distinct tonal shift from the rest of the series.
Mhm. It does
Because like
feel different.
the newer movie that they made, the Disney Plus one they made just like within the last 2 years, that one like tonally
Yeah.
felt more like the series. But
Mhm.
Across the Second Dimension
Well,
definitely has a much darker tone than the series does.
also correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't the movie like, if I remember right? I think this came out after Phineas and Ferb stopped. Like they stopped making Phineas and Ferb, and this was kind of like the traditional Disney trope at that time. At least I remember a couple of them that did this, whereas like they had a TV show and they made a movie, and then the series was over. And so like wasn't this basically like this was a movie, and it was like supposed to be like, yeah, we're done with Phineas and Ferb for now.
No, I don't.
Now
I
they've
think
come.
it came out during the series. Hold up.
It did. I mean, I can definitely be wrong with that. I don't remember. I do now remember that it came out in 2011 because of the thing we were talking about last week with the
Oh yeah,
comparison to Avengers. But I don't know
yeah,
when the
and
series ended. So
2015. So
hmm.
so it came out in the middle of season three. No wait, yeah, season three. No
Oh,
wait,
okay.
no, sorry, between season two and three. So halfway through the series.
Wow, that early on, huh? I mean, I mean either way, like I kind of understand the reasoning for going different. Like it's not, it's a great movie either way. Like even though it's tonally different from the rest of them, but I was thinking maybe it might be because they're kind of wrapping up the series. Um, but I guess not. You know what? I should do my research before I open my mouth, but I won't. Never will.
Mm-hmm.
I stand by my methods
Mm-hmm.
and my
And
stupidity.
I would like to do a deep dive into the movie sometime in the future, but I want to have to watch that. Um, we'll watch it before it.
Hmm.
And I think the Across the Second Nation kind of deserves its own episode. So we might do that sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Let us know if you want to hear about that. But no, let's talk about the series a little bit more. So I would say we could talk about characters, but there really aren't that much like in the way of character development because again, well, one thing it's a kid show, but
Hmm.
again, the like with the A plot, like with Phineas and Ferb, like the whole point is like nothing ever changes for them.
Yeah. I mean, the
Like,
one episode that they get caught is a dream, that
mhm,
Candace is having. So, like, you know, it shows you, for whatever reason, a possibility. I don't know why that would be. I mean, obviously, yes, they did crash and break the house. But, I don't ever understand why Candace expects their mom to be upset that her sons are geniuses. It is what it is, I guess. But some of the stuff they do is dangerous. Don't get me wrong. Like it'd be fun, but from a mother's perspective, yes,
Mm-hmm.
it's dangerous. But you know, but sending them off to boot camp basically. But that's definitely extreme, and obviously something Candace would come up with in her mind. But you know, but yeah, like you said, for the most part, they're pretty much invincible. Um, Speaking of like Phineas and Ferb, moving over to like Milo Murphy, the show that they came out with more recently, that's supposed to be in the same universe as Phineas and Ferb. There's an episode with those where like Milo Murphy's Law, or Murphy's Law. Um, so he's like negative energy. Everything goes wrong around him. Well, Phineas and Ferb, everything goes right around them. And it's like that's what you see throughout the whole entire show. Nothing ever goes wrong for them.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing too. Like, if you compare Phineas and Ferb and Milo Murphy's Law, like, Milo Murphy's Law is not as formulaic as you can definitely see the influence, but it's not as formulaic as
Hmm.
like Phineas and Ferb is. But it is definitely an interesting comparison, and I think Milo Murphy's Law is underrated.
Oh
I
yeah,
like,
100%.
well, for one thing, I didn't even know it existed, and it was connected to Phineas and Ferb until after both seasons had aired on Disney Channel.
When did it come out? Because I don't really know when I got into it. I think Katie showed it to me though.
Well, I had ended up
Shout
showing it.
out to
I
Katie, my
showed it to
sister.
Katie.
Well, then
I was the
maybe
one
I
who
saw
showed,
it. That Well, then when you show it to her? Because that probably was when I found it.
probably like 2019, 2020, somewhere in there.
Hmm.
So
Sarah still hasn't seen the whole thing, which I don't think she has. We might have watched it all the way through. I'm not sure, but it's so good. She needs to watch it.
okay, so 2016 to 2019.
Oh wow, that's older than I thought it would have been.
Yeah,
Do they still only have two seasons?
yeah,
It's only two, right? Yeah.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean,
underrated show. Did that? And you said 2016. I don't. Time it's 2023, and I thought it was like 2015 a minute ago. I don't really know what year it is, but um, I'm not entirely sure when Disney Plus came out. Was this like a Disney Plus exclusive show, or did it come out like on Disney Channel?
no, it was actually Disney Channel.
It was Disney Channel. Okay, I haven't watched Disney Channel in years, so it's not something I would have known. But I guess it just didn't do well on there. That's because nowadays
Mm-hmm.
kids just like stupid slapstick humor. Maybe not all of them. Some kid shows are actually good, but
Well, yeah. But let's jump back into Phineas Ferb. So well, one thing I kind of want to
mm-hmm.
ask you about is: are there any like episodes to you that like stand out as like ones you can remember, ones you like?
Yeah. I mean, I'd say I do like the one like I was mentioning earlier where they are shipped off to boot camp. I think that's fun. I think it's because it's different. It's kind of a fun one. Another one that's like really different is when they are like it's like a fairy tale world, and I don't know if it starts off the episode like this or you find out later on, but Carl is reading a story to Major Monogram because Major Monogram's sick. But it's like it's completely
Mm-hmm.
different than I mean like the basic formula is the same. Phineas and Ferb go on an adventure, and Candace is trying to stop them, and Doofenshmirtz and Perry are having their battle. But it's still a little bit different. And I think those episodes are nice, fun. A little bit different than the normal formula. Um, Other than that, like there's not really any ones that like specifically stand out to me. Like I like obviously like, I like all the songs. The songs are great. Um, correct me if I'm wrong. A is it a movie or is the Summer Never Ends that last? Is that the last episode? Couple episodes of the series where they're racing around the world, or is that a movie?
No, that's a special. That was like I forget what season that was in. That was not the end of the series. The last
Okay.
because of course the last episode of the series was that backdoor pilot, the Alka files, um
Yeah, but I'm saying like of Phineas and Ferb.
the let me just get on Disney Plus. That'd be the easiest way to do it. um
Yeah. Because like those episodes are fun,
mm,
a little bit different, and um, obviously the aglet episode is great because now I know what an aglet is. So a whole entire generation knows what
because of
an
this
aglet is because of yes, yes.
show we know what an aglet is. Yeah, yeah, and that's actually kind of a become kind of a like internet meme, like you know only kids who watched Phineas and Ferb know what an aglet is, and my laptop is being slow, probably because I'm trying to run. Like I have like 10 browser pages open. I'm running OBS and I'm running Discord, so
Yeah,
um
I have a second monitor set up and I disconnected it because I was like, I don't want my laptop to crash again.
mm, here. Okay.
I have less things I need on my end, so.
Mm. All right. Let's see. Phineas and Ferb.
Phineas and Ferb, Phineas and Ferb.
Okay, so no, the last episode is like actually like of a like actual Phineas and Ferb is the one where like the Groundhog Day episode with Candace, where she's like reliving the same
Hmm.
day over and over again. That's one of the
I'd
season
probably
four.
know it if I saw it.
I don't. I haven't watched all the season 4 ones as much because when season 4 was coming out, I wasn't. I didn't really watch Disney Channel. Like pretty much all season, like 1, 2, and 3
Yeah.
were coming out when I was actually watching Disney Channel. Um, I went. I'd gone back and watched it on Netflix and Disney Plus later on season 4, but that one I didn't watch it as much. Like I didn't watch it on like actual Disney Channel. But yeah, that's the one.
I'm not-
The one. What's up?
Go ahead. No, I was gonna say
Uh,
I'm about to look at it to see if uh if I can recognize it or not.
mm. So
But
yeah,
anyways,
Summer
you
Belongs
can
to
go ahead and
You.
say what.
Summer Belongs to You, which is the one you were talking about, is
Mhm.
pretty much the season 2 finale.
Huh? I'm not gonna be lie here. I've seen the Phineas and Ferb like Star Wars stuff, and I've seen these last couple episodes here. Episode 29, 30, and I've seen the two Star Wars ones. Last Day of Summer, Part 1 and Part 2. I'm not sure if I've seen those before. But I've
Mm.
seen some of the Alcaphilos, so maybe I have, and I'm just not remembering it based off of the.
I'm sure you've seen them. It's you're probably just not remembering them, but I'm sure you've seen them.
Yeah. I can't call myself a true Phineas and Ferb fan. No, it's fine. I know what an
Mm.
aglet is. That's all you really need. Yeah.
But
So let's talk about this though, real quick. So Phineas and Ferb are not biological brothers. They are um married
Stepbrothers.
into so yeah, stepbrothers. That's what I was looking for. Uh, Flynn Fletcher is the dad, and mom is the mom. Um, I can't remember what her name is. I'm Lindana and I wanna have
Li-
fun.
li-
So I guess Lindana.
Linda Flynn and Lawrence Fletcher.
Yeah. So, um, but Phoenix is uh with Linda, and Ferb is with uh Flynn,
Lawrence.
and Candace is whatever.
Candace,
Doesn't really matter.
Candace and Phineas are biological brother and sister.
Just yeah, they're so. Let's ask this because it's never discussed. Where, who's the father of Phineas and Ferb? And Lindana was a pop star. Could it have possibly been something to do with that? The life she wants to forget. If you also look at it, to get away from some of the thoughts of that, which obviously there's reasons they're not introduced in the show, like possibilities of what could have happened wrong. Because even if you just get into the realm of divorce or even death, it's just not something you really want to bring up in a kids show. But that aside, we do see in the in it's the dream episode where they get sent off to boot camp. Stacy sings the song "Little Brothers," and it shows when Phineas and Ferb first met, and they're pretty young. I don't quite remember, but they might have been in diapers. I'm not entirely sure, but they're pretty young. Now, obviously, this is all just Candace's imagination, but I would assume that they probably still were pretty young when they met. So it's like, what's is Doofenshmirtz the father? I mean, there's a bunch of different things to think here.
So, with the whole Doofenshmirtz thing, like, we're not gonna just we're not gonna talk about the fact that in the series, Linda and Doofenshmirtz actually go on a date.
Yeah.
But at the end of that, when Doofenshmirtz is telling the story,
Rock
at the end
bottom.
of, at the end of that
Yeah,
story,
go ahead.
he says, and then I never saw her again, and that was their first date. So,
Yeah. I
Candace
mean,
and
yeah,
Phineas
they obviously
are biological brother and sister. So, and there's a substantial gap in time, or not substantial, but there's
yeah, and
several year gap in the time there.
yeah. Well, I mean, they
Well,
obviously did that so that there was no theories about him actually being the father. I
and
mean,
also the fact that Dan Povenmire, the creator of the show, actually
hmm
debunked that on TikTok. So, you
yeah.
know,
So what? Because I don't know if I would assume they probably didn't really talk too much about this, because it's not something that's ever addressed in the show, and it's never something that really needs to be addressed in the show. Like first episode of Phineas and Ferb. Phineas and Ferb are brothers. That's all you know. You don't really, it doesn't come until later in the series that you find out that they aren't actually, biological. So I wonder if it was ever a thing that they like thought up of, oh yeah, this is what happened. This is the backstory. This is why, this is where Phineas and Ferb, this is their father. This is um, Ferb's mother. Like, I wonder if that was ever a thought that they actually talked about, or if it was just something that's like, yeah, well, this is how we have it. Don't need to question it too much. It's a kid's show,
mm, yeah.
None of you watched more of his videos, so I didn't know if you had ever come across one that discussed that or anything.
I don't think he actually has or he's never talked about having an actual theory
hmm
of um, who they were, or who Phineas and Candace's biological father was, and who Ferb's mom was. Um,
hmm
Although he did make a joke in one of those videos where he's debunking the Doofenshmirtz being Phineas's father thing. He did make a joke about that, basically saying, everyone's so concerned about who Phineas's dad is, but no one asks who's Ferb's mom.
Yeah. I mean, that really is the thing. Is like I don't know why, but it feels more important to find out who Phineas and Candace's dad is more than it feels like it needs to be known who Ferb's mom is, you know? And
Mhm.
I don't necessarily know why. It just also you do think about this too. Um, and this is another reason why it's a kids show. You can't overthink some of this. But they show, I think they show flashbacks, right, from when they met back at the what's the band called?
Love
Love
handle.
Handle.
Yeah.
When they meet at the Love Handle concert, they're still pretty young. Now, obviously
Mhm.
not like they couldn't have had kids at that point, but you know, what had they already gone through divorces or deaths or something like that to, you know,
So
be in that situation?
Dan Podmer actually addressed that on TikTok too.
Okay, go for it. Go for it. Tell me what's
Okay,
up.
so basically he was saying like um in the time period. So this was only like that scene you mentioned earlier when
Hmm.
Ferb is introduced to the family.
Yeah.
That was only like the Love Handle concert was only like a couple months before then. The
Mm.
reason they look so much younger is because they're dressed like you would go to a band. Like they're not dressed in their normal, like everyday clothes. They're dressed like they would be to go to a band. And since Love Handle's kind of like an '80s band, that's why they're dressed in like '80s clothing.
Mm. Okay. Honestly, feels like that's a answer to clarify why they did that, even though they probably didn't think about it in the moment.
Oh
But who
no,
knows? I mean,
I
that
doubt
could,
they did, but yeah.
yeah. And that's the thing. Also, like people who ask him about things, like he has to figure out so people can be satisfied. You know, things even if they did think about it, you know, in the time, like this is a kids show. One way or another, it's a kids show. Certain things don't have to be questioned. You know,
Hmm.
um, it's not meant for that. You know, despite the fact that yes, I already asked the questions. You know,
Hmm.
they're not meant to be answered. I
Yeah.
mean,
No.
who's Perry's mother? I mean, we don't know.
Now another thing I want to talk about. We're still talking about the thing of theories too. Now this is another theory that Dan has debunked, but I want to hear your opinion on it. Have you heard the theory about the fact that like the whole show is in Candace's head, that she is a like basically mentally insane. She
Hmm.
does not have little brothers. She's just imagining everything or no, I think the theory is that Phineas and Ferb died and she's imagining all them like designing all this fantastical stuff, and that's like pretty much the whole show is in her head.
Yeah. I have heard that theory, like at least in passing. Like you explained it, I've heard it before. Um, I don't really see much evidence for it. I might need the theory broken down more as to why people think that. But, you know, if it's already been debunked by the creator, then it doesn't really,
Yeah.
need much in depth. I mean, I don't really see it. Like I don't see why how that theory besides someone being like, "Hey, here's a crazy thought," you know, and it is. So,
Yeah. Like you said, since Dan's already debunked it, I don't really think there's
mhm.
much of a reason to think about that. But now
I
one
mean,
thing.
do they have
Go ahead.
actual like reasons? Do they have actual reasons for it, or is it just like a crazy theory that's going around?
As far as I can tell, it's just a crazy theory that's going around.
Oh, okay.
Okay, at least with the Doofenshmirtz being Phineas's dad theory, I
Hmm.
will give that credit that there is some credibility because obviously, Linda and Doofenshmirtz knew each other, so there's
Hmm.
that, and the fact that like one another thing that people point to is um, the fact like you were talking about Doofenshmirtz is whether he portrays it or not, he is at least somewhat smart. He is does
Hmm.
have an engineering mindset, and Phineas also has that. So that's
Yeah,
another thing a lot of people point to. So I
and
can understand that.
kind of triangle-ish heads. Yeah, that's the right shape.
Yeah. So I can understand that theory more so than the other one.
Yeah.
Um, but again,
Ow.
there's stuff in the show that does not make that possible. So,
Yeah. Yeah. So, anyways, what were you saying?
I wanted to too because I was kind of curious about their ages in the show because
Mm-hmm.
in the show they never explicitly say how old Phineas and Ferb and Candace and all them are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I couldn't figure it out with Candace, but I did figure it. So, with Phineas and Ferb, in the original pitch, they were supposed to be 9.
Mm-hmm.
Original pitch for the show, they were supposed to be 9. But by the time that they made the pilot and stuff, they had, or Dan and Swampy had kind of changed their idea of that. They didn't want to actually say how old they were. So, kids from more ages could kind of like, I guess, put themselves in those shoes. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Um, so later on, they said that they were younger than 15, but
They seem like they're probably younger than about 12 too.
but there's an episode where do you remember the episode where they go into the future and then it's really like most of the episode's about future Candace going back to the past to try to bust Phineas and Ferb.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So in that episode, they go 20. They say that explicitly was mentioned that they go 20 years into the future, and then their
Mm-hmm.
mom at the end of the episode, their mom from the future makes a comment about because like young Candace finally meets older Linda, and they basically is trying to get her to bust Phineas and Ferb, and Linda from the future is basically like, well, I don't have jurisdiction over these guys anymore. My Phineas and Ferb are 30 years old.
Yeah.
So, if they're 20 years into the future, that means Phineas and Ferb are 10 years old in the show.
And I feel like that fits. That
Yeah.
fits. But you also have to look at this. And I don't know what season it is. So I don't have an actual thing. But there is an episode about Candace getting her permit for her driver's
Mm.
license or permit or whatever. So I don't know what state they're supposed to technically be from, but you could probably do that. She's probably somewhere between 13 and 15 throughout the show's, running as she gets older, closer to 15, 16 years old
I,
for.
I would probably say Candace and Stacy. Candace, Stacy, and Jeremy, I think, are the same age. Jeremy might be a little bit older, but Candace and Stacy are like 14, 15.
Hmm.
Jeremy is probably around 15, and I
Hmm.
think Vanessa is probably 16.
Yeah, that fit.
Yeah.
So Vanessa and Ferb.
Yeah, so that's why I wouldn't say if Vanessa's like, because Vanessa's definitely like seems older than Candace, but I
Well, then
wouldn't put
how
her
old?
that much
Well,
older because
let's talk about this though. How old do you think what's his name? Major Monogram's son is? Because of
because
that
he's
romantic thing. He's at
because
least
he
18.
because he does seem older. Yeah.
I mean, he
Okay.
could
Okay. So
maybe
okay.
be 17. He could maybe
Okay.
be 17, but I feel like that's like it.
Okay. So
I
let's
think
let's say
Go ahead.
let's just say he's 17 and leave it at that.
It's a kids show. We're not supposed to think this hard about it. Some characters
because
are tall, some characters are short. That's all you need to know.
I also don't really feel comfortable pulling Vanessa's age up any higher because of her and Ferb. Because okay, let's say
Exactly.
Phineas and Ferb are probably 18 in the actor age when it jumps to the future when Vanessa and Ferb are dating. So Vanessa's probably
Hmm.
only like 24 and Ferb's 18,
Yeah.
which still at that age is kind of a bigger gap. But you know, um, yeah.
He's
So
mature
I
for
would.
his age.
I don't know. Like, okay, like give it a couple years, it's not really that weird, but still, like right there, it's weird.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Well, that will
But
lead great into what we're going to talk about later, but poof.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
kinda, kinda. Anyways,
Not exactly the same, but yeah.
not really the same, but it's anyways, it's a kids show. Don't think too hard.
It doesn't have to make that much sense, but
No,
yeah.
no, it does not.
Um,
No, it does not.
but I would be curious where Dan Povenmire would put their ages.
Yeah, he probably put him someplace, and then you'd bring up that Major Monogram Sun thing, and he'd be like, "Wait a minute." Honestly, he's probably years ahead on all of
Hmm.
us. He's like, "No, I got it all figured out. Here's
But
how it's all okay."
but like I said, I know at least the kids are 10.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah,
they're all kids, but like Phineas, Ferb, Isabella, like all their friends are 10. That's
yeah.
that's where I'd put that. But yeah.
So where do they get the budget? Are they just using mom and dad's credit card, or do they have a lot of money saved up,
Believe
or
it
are
or
they stealing a lot of
not,
stuff?
believe it
Is
or
there a
not,
canon
Dan
answer
actually
for
answered
this?
that too. Dan
All
actually
right,
answered that too on TikTok.
let me know. Let me know what's up.
So okay, so in now okay, this again kind of feels like Dan is just like coming up with an answer that people would be satisfied with, like after the
Most of the time,
fact.
it is.
But okay, basically what he says is in the first episode, the roller coaster episode,
Mm.
Phineas makes the comment to Ferb that they should have charged more, so they charged
Mm.
for the roller coaster. And then Dan said that they took that money that they charged for the roller coaster and invested it, and then their investments matured, and that's what they used to fund the rest of their summer.
I
I
mean,
don't know where
I
they.
think I've
I
heard that
don't know where
before.
they got. I don't know where they got the money to build the roller coaster in the first place, but
Yeah, yeah. Um, I've heard that one before, and yeah, usually it glosses over where they got the money for the roller coaster. But you know what? It's a kid show. I think we're way overthinking this kid show, but you know what? It's okay. It's okay. That's the point of this podcast is to overthink everything.
yeah.
We're a
Some other.
much more mild version of Matt Pat because we're not crushing people's dreams. We're just making them or not dreams, their childhoods. We're just making them rethink certain things.
Well, I also just want to get everything just like straight in my head, where all this stuff fits in.
Yeah, you can't straighten this out in your head if everything else in your head's not straight.
True.
So,
Very true. Very true.
yeah.
Now, one thing I also did want
Same,
to
same
talk about
problem over
too.
here.
One thing I also did want to talk about too is and we've talked about this before in the past too, but
Hmm.
since we're talking about Phineas and Ferb, I want to talk about the theme song and specifically
Hmm.
Bowling for Soup, which is the
Before we
band
get to that,
that. Go ahead.
I was gonna say
Sorry.
before we get to the band, um, I had it mentioned or in one of Matt Pat's videos, I had it mentioned 104 days of summer vacation. Who has 104 days of summer vacation?
Not only that,
He said in his research that the most that he ever saw for like a school district was like 90. So that's close, but that's like 14 days off, 104 days. Yeah, 14
not
days
only
off.
that, not only that, not only that, there's like 130 episodes of Phineas and Ferb.
Well, there's that funny moment where they kind of where Doofenshmirtz says something about man, I just feel like this summer keeps going on and on and on.
But
Now,
like
okay,
this,
so I do want to get to Bowling for Soup, but if you think about this, how many episodes actually take place during the summer? Because there are a couple specials that take place during the winter. I think there might be a Halloween special or two here and there. Those could take place during the summer, but how many actually take place during the summer? Do they actually have 104 episodes that are summer?
that's a good question because I have not done my research on that. That's a good question. But also one
David,
thing you do,
compile the evidence and get back to me.
but also one thing you have to think
Go
about
ahead.
too is there's okay. So there are 132 episodes of Phineas and Ferb. There are a
Hmm.
bunch of specials, but there's also a lot of the regular episodes are 2 episodes. This is just
Yeah.
counting both those episodes as one. So there's at least 200 stories in Phineas and Ferb. Around 200. So you also have to think about that. Now, some of them could have taken place on the same day because some of those, some of those pairs did take place at the same time. Some of them are like in the evening, which it could be the same day as some of the other ones. But for the most part, there are a lot of the regular episodes seem to be 2 different days.
Yeah. Well, also you have to think about this too. They always talk about how they essentially like do one thing a day. Like, what are we gonna do today? Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
thing for each episode. Like it always acts like a new day, you know?
Yeah.
Um so I think it's pretty safe to say that if you were to count every single episode as one day, you'd be pretty safe in doing so. But we have to see how many of those take place in the summer
Mm-hmm.
specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it technically, I guess it's not like, there can be multiple summers. Like it's not like it's fashioned as if it's all the same, like they're all at one time. But it technically could be, you know, the next year's summer or whatever. But it's a cartoon. We're not supposed to think that much about it. Eventually, we're gonna
Mm-hmm.
have to stop saying this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, bowling for soup makes me
Yeah.
hungry.
So Bowling for Soup did the Phineas and Ferb theme and the Jimmy Neutron theme. Those are like the two like kids show theme song, or like the only like theme songs they did. But okay, Bowling for Soup is a punk rock band. If you've never listened to any of their music besides like the Phineas and Ferb intro song or the Jimmy Neutron intro song, it's very shocking because like you think of
I,
this and like you think it
I'm
might
not gonna
be
say I'm not gonna say the name of the song, but I remember the first song you showed me from them, and it was oh boy was it shocking.
yeah, because okay, you think a band that has like these kinds of like these kinds of gigs, playing like intros to kids TV shows would be more kid friendly, but no, they're if you decide to look that band up after this episode, expect a lot of language. I'm just gonna say
Yeah,
that. Um,
yeah.
I mean, okay, if you like punk rock, they're pretty good, but as far as like the language, like I said, it's kind of
It, if you want your childhood ruined, maybe don't look them up. But I still like Phineas and Ferb after having listened to them. I mean, I like the band. I think it's like what they have is fun. Like it's fun music.
mm,
But it is 100%. It's shocking because you're just
mm.
like you said, it's a kids show. It's a kids intro. You're like this, and did they do some of the songs throughout the series too? I know they have an extended version of the Phineas and Ferb song. I didn't know if maybe they did some other ones, but
the
nonetheless, it's still a kids show that they're doing,
the
and they are not kid friendly.
the lead singer, or yeah, the lead singer of Love Handle was voiced by the lead singer of Bowling for Soup, so he sang all the Love Handle songs
Okay.
too. But yeah, um, like I said, when I first looked at it, because I'm just like, I'd seen that, I'm just like, that I think I was on Spotify and I'd seen the Phineas and Ferb theme, and it was credited Bowling for Soup. So I was like, yeah, I'll look and see what else kind of other songs they have, and yeah, that
You're sitting
yeah,
there, you're like eyes wide open as it
yeah,
just
because like I said,
blares.
I was not expecting that that as their
Yeah. It's
yeah.
fun. Anyone who's listening to this, go look them up. They're fun. It's a fun time. I mean, it may not be for
I
you,
think we
but
I think we've given adequate warning for anyone who looks that up.
yeah.
um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You've
um,
been warned. You know what you're doing.
Mm.
But anyways,
Yeah.
so David, do you have anything else to add about Phineas and Ferb, the TV show? If we're gonna come back to the second dimension at a later date.
Well, I mean, I've got a bunch of like unconnected like factoids about the show. I don't know how much of this you actually want to hear. Like how much of this
Fact
we could actually.
one. What's
You
fact
just
one,
give
David?
me. You just give me flashbacks to that skit we did.
Oh, all right, David. Treat it like that. Treat it like that. That video that we did. Okay, the 30 facts in 2 minutes or something like that. So, all right, compose yourself, and then what's the first fact?
So okay, so Phineas and Ferb is set in Danville, which is in the tri-state area,
Mm-hmm.
but Danville is also in Marsh County. They mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when they mentioned that in the show, but it might just be in like throwaway gags and like signs and stuff or whatever. But of course, Danville is named after Dan Povenmire, and Marsh County
Mm-hmm.
is named after Jeff Marsh, the co-creator. Yeah. Um,
Cool. Fact two.
you're gonna make me do this,
Trying to make
aren't
it more
you?
interesting. Yeah, how many facts do you have? I don't want to do one and then you don't have a fact. I don't want to look like an idiot.
That's kind of hard. You know that, right?
All right, whatever. Fact two. Sorry for spiking the mic.
Well, uh, Dan Povenmire actually worked on a lot of shows before Phineas and Ferb. Like Dan Povenmire wrote the Campfire song from SpongeBob.
I did know that. I did
Yeah,
know that.
that well that kind of makes sense because like you think about all the songs in Phineas and Ferb, that makes sense.
Hmm.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. I don't actually know what Swampy did before Phineas and Ferb, but yeah,
Fact three.
Factory. All right, let me see.
Yeah,
Let me
I'm,
try to
I'm,
think.
I'm asking. All right, so we're out of
Try to
facts
think.
now.
Let me try to think of one.
But after fact three, that's it, right?
Sure. Sure.
I mean, if you have more, that's fine. I just need to intro you.
Oh, you have to
This
intro me.
is David Harley with facts about Phineas and Ferb. For starters, we start off with fact one. And I go into, now, fact two. And I go, and on to fact three. And if we keep going, I'll be like, and then there was four facts. But I had to keep going unless I won't look like an idiot saying stuff like that if you don't have facts to, cause then I just promise stuff that we can't fulfill on because you didn't tell me.
You done rambling?
Mostly. Do you have a fact?
I don't know. I was gonna see if you were done rambling. I'm also
I can
stalling.
ramble for as I can ramble for as long as you need. Just hold up three fingers whenever you figure out what their third fact is.
Well, did
I
you
see
know
movement.
Did you know Perry the
Oh,
Platypus and all the clone troopers on Clone Wars were voiced by the same person?
I don't think I did.
D. Bradley Baker voiced both.
Hmm. Isn't there something about Perry the Platypus with how like something with the fact that he's turquoise or the bluish color, Um and how like
Oh, I think I know what you're
yeah.
talking about. Um, so yeah,
From the O, it
Dan.
sounds like yes, you do. Continue.
But Dan is talking about that on his TikTok about how he has a lot of people asking him like, why did you color the platypus teal?
Mm.
You know, platypuses aren't teal; they're brown. But
Yes, they are. They're teal, David. They're teal.
yes,
What are you
I'm
talking
getting to
about?
that.
No, but they're teal. No, like they're
I'm
actually
I'm
teal. Anyways,
I'm
go ahead.
getting to that. I'm
Don't
getting to
shatter
that.
my dreams.
Well, I'm getting to that. Okay. So
We'll get to it faster.
he colored it teal because he thought it looked cool. But
Mm-hmm.
back in like 2020 or 2021, scientists figured out that platypuses, platypeople, platypi,
Platypi.
platypi,
Whatever
platypi,
you want to call them.
platypeople.
The world may never know.
But that platypi glow green under ultraviolet light.
He's ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, I see teal, platypi, platypeople, platypus all the time.
Uh-huh.
Don't
Do you see
shatter my dreams, David.
Do you see an ultraviolet?
I see you. David, if it made sense, I don't think it'd be on this podcast, okay?
Oh.
At least not
Okay
this
then.
portion of it.
True. True. Very true.
All right. Is there anything? Do you have any more fun facts that I need to announce? For Phineas and Ferb?
No, I don't think so. Unless you want me to
Okay,
come up with
cool.
some more, but
No, I'd rather you not just sit there and twiddle your thumbs while your brain is frying itself. I mean, at least crack an egg on
oh, is
it
that
so
what
that,
that smell is?
we can have. Yeah, at least crack an egg on it so you can at least have something to eat after the fact. It's called brain food.
I don't. Uh, okay, let's just move on to what's new with you. What's new? What's new with you? What's new? What's new with you? What's new? What's new with you? Yeah.
Well, David, what's new with you?
Well, I think we can just bring up the fact that what's new with you, or what's new with you, is kind of new with us because we haven't done one in like 2 weeks.
Yeah, we really haven't. It's not much is new, but anyways.
Because I don't feel like we did much. If we did one, we didn't do much of one on the Rogue One podcast, and we didn't end up
Mhm.
getting to one last week because we talked about Community for 2 hours somehow.
Yeah. Um, that's kind of crazy. But anyways. So, David, what's new with you? What's going on in your life?
um, well, there's several things I wanted to talk about because, like I said, we haven't done what's new with you in a while. Um, so not this past weekend, but the weekend before last, which as of recording this would have been 3 weekends ago. My brother Robert and I, who was on the podcast last weekend, or last Monday, uh, went to go see Sound of Freedom, and that's what you.
I have,
Hmm?
yeah, I have not seen this movie. I've done research into the basic plot of it all. I've heard enough about it, but if you want to do any diving into it, you can head that up.
Well, I don't want to dive too much into it because we try to keep our podcast more lighthearted, and obviously this is not a
Hmm.
lighthearted movie at all.
No.
But it's a based on a true story about rescuing kids from human traffickers.
Hmm.
It's like I said, I don't really want to get too much into it because I want to try to keep this more lighthearted. But go support this movie. It's a great movie. It's very I don't know, informative. I don't know if that's how I put it, but it's very powerful. Just
As
go see it if you.
someone who has not, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you
No,
on
go
that,
ahead.
but
Go ahead.
it is hard to sometimes with the delay and stuff. But what I was gonna say was, as someone who has not seen it, um, I don't have a whole lot of time to go see movies, so I may not see it in theaters, but it is something that needs to be supported. From what I've looked into, um, any bad reviews on the movie have more to do with the actors, which is stupid. Like you can't just go out and say a movie's bad because you don't like the actors' political views, which is mostly what I've seen. Um, because it is a serious issue. The premise of the movie, it was based on a true story, and as much as we like to live in our perfect world where our lives pretty much go about the same day to day, there are people who are really affected by a lot of really bad things in the world, and this is one of them. And I'm not entirely sure, I think this, going in support of this movie really just brings awareness to it. I think is really the biggest thing with this. But like, it needs to be brought up because there is a lot of evil in the world, and if we're blind to it, it's gonna get worse. So,
Mm, yeah, and that's why I said like this movie's like I said it is a like I barely had the stomach to watch this movie, but
mhm.
it's important to know all of this stuff because like and this is one of the things because like I obviously I knew this stuff went on, but like just watching this movie kind of put it more into perspective, more real
Mhm.
because it is it is real, and that's why I said like this movie is it's really raising awareness is what it's for. But
Yeah.
I would say if you can go watch this movie, go support this movie. It's an excellent movie for what it's trying to do for raising awareness for this kind of thing because like I said, yeah, there is a lot of darkness in this world, and that this movie is kind of raising awareness for that and
Mhm.
trying to shed light or be a light, be a beacon of hope too.
Yeah. I think one thing, and you and me have talked about this before, where like we don't obviously want to get political on the show. And from what I've heard, it didn't sound like the movie was overly political. Like, I mean, it's talking about something that is just inherently wrong. Like, it's not really something that's on a side, right or left. Like, it's just wrong. Everyone should think it's wrong, does think it's wrong. No one's debating it. Um, but we've talked about how we don't want to get political on here. We want to keep things lighthearted. We want to keep things, fun, so everyone can watch it and have fun with us. Um, that being said, though, I know we've talked about this before, where when it comes to kids, there's no messing around with that. Neither one
Mm-hmm.
of us agree with anything done with the realm of kids. If you're mistreating a kid, you're in the wrong, and we're always going to be against that. You know, and this has to do a lot. It has to do with the wrongful treatment of kids, and that needs to be, our neither one of us are parents, right? But it doesn't take a genius to know that kids are precious and that they need to. I mean, you think about it, like a baby he can't protect itself. A kid can't protect itself. You know, sometimes David, you and me can't protect ourselves, but we're past that point. Kids need to be protected, and the world that we live in shouldn't be constantly the thing that's attacking them. Like, and you understand what I'm saying that by that. Like there are obviously things in the world that are going to affect kids, and not everyone can be protected by parents or family or whatever. Um, but like it shouldn't be something that every like kids should have to deal with. Like stuff like this, kids should not have to deal with this stuff, you know. And there's some kids in the world that have to and do. And like we're talking about this. We want to bring awareness to this movie so that people can. I mean, I know not many people listen to this podcast, but that movie needs to be supported. Awareness needs to be brought about this because when it comes to kids, you don't need to mess with that. Like they need to be kids. They need to grow up, and they don't need to experience the world and how evil it is before that.
Mm. So yeah, basically, to sum up all this, like I said, I already said this, but I would urge anyone to go see this movie, go support this movie, because the message this movie's trying to, get out is very important. So if you can, if you have the stomach to do it, go watch the movie. It is very heavy. I'll give a warning for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, if you have the stomach to do it, go watch the movie, go support the movie. This message needs to get out there.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Well, we don't normally get
I
that.
don't really.
I don't know how to
I
come back
know
from
it's.
this.
I was about to say, I don't really know how to transition, but we probably should transition somehow because I don't think that's how we want to leave this pod going. I mean, it's been a pretty fun one with Phineas and Ferb. It got a little heavy there, so I don't
Yeah.
know. We can maybe just say that we're done with that little segment there, and we're gonna move somehow into a new one of whatever else is new with David.
Oh, you don't have anything new with you?
I went and saw Barbie.
Oh, you didn't go see Oppenheimer?
No, Sarah wanted to see Barbie, and I wasn't fighting. I wanted to see it too. I mean, I want to see Oppenheimer, but like she wanted to see Barbie, and I was like, I want to see Barbie, so I was like, let's go see Barbie. It was a good movie.
Now, okay. Let me ask this: from the trailers, it seems
Mm-hmm.
like it's basically just the Lego Movie. Like the kind
Eh,
of like the
not really.
toy getting into reality.
So, spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen Barbie that but plans to and cares. Um, so essentially, and I was listening to a podcast earlier today that was talking about this. They compared Barbie to Anchorman, and they said in Anchorman, there's a lot of things that like don't really make sense. Like, okay, when the two crews fight, why do they just meet up in a random alley and start fighting each other? Doesn't really make sense, but it makes sense for the movie. That's kind of how this is. There's not a whole lot of things that are explained. It's just it makes sense for the movie, and you're supposed to accept it, and that's fine. But essentially, what happens is, Barbie Land, um, is this own little heart-shaped area on the world map, and it is its own area. And then there's the real world. So there's a series of events you have to go through to get to the real world from Barbie Land, and then Barbie Land, or from the real world to Barbie Land. Back and forth. There's a series of events. Um. So, anyways, Barbie goes to the real world because she's starting to have thoughts of depression and death, and she's like, "Well, this isn't normal." So she goes to what they call Weird Barbie, who is Barbie who has been played with too hard. Um, and she tells her that um she needs to go to the real world and find out who's playing with her and who's pushing thoughts of depression on her. Because apparently there's like a doll for every bar. I mean, like Margot Robbie, who's the main character in it doesn't quite make sense because like Barbie comes to the real world, but there's still technically a doll for her, and it's not mentioned in this. She goes to a specific girl. It actually ends up being her mom, but she goes to this specific family, girl and her mom. But Margot Robbie, who plays traditional Barbie, like everyone has traditional Barbie, like in when Barbie was coming out, like more than one person had that Barbie. So that part doesn't really make much sense. But you're not supposed to think that hard into it. But anyways, her point is that she's supposed to um uh fix that problem because you know as long as this person who's playing with her in the real world has thoughts of death and depression, she's gonna have that in Barbie Land. So that's kind of the pushing part of the movie. And then her and Ken go to the real world. Ken learns about patriarchy, and because so Barbie Land is run by all the Barbies. So the all Kens of all kinds are background. Like they're just background. They're basically just there. And so the message of the movie was basically like, in Barbie Land, women rule the world and men are the background characters, and in the real world, sometimes it's flipped. Now, for as feminist as a like strong that sounds, it didn't really come across too preachy in one area or another. Um, my thought on it is that at the end of the movie, it kind of seemed like the message was, you know, you don't need to be putting really anyone down because everyone's important, Like, at the beginning of the movie, Ken's in the background. By the end of it, he's trying to be his own person, and he, they maybe start trying to treat the Kens better a little bit, just a little bit. You know, you're never gonna watch the movie. I know that, but it's a fun comedic movie. Like it is a fun watch, and you don't really have to know anything about Barbie to enjoy it. Um, I wore my Barbie pink shirt, and I went and saw the movie, and I enjoyed myself. And you know, for as political as it would seem that a movie like that could get, I mean, it didn't really come across like that. So it's not going to be for everyone, but I thought it was good.
Mm. Yeah, you're right. I'm probably not gonna see that, so that's the most I'm gonna get to that movie. But
yeah. I mean, the end plot of the movie is that when Ken learns about patriarchy, he comes back to Barbie Land and basically takes over. And so then it's transitions from a society of men or women to men, and the rest of the movie is basically the Barbies retaking over, and then Margot Robbie's Barbie decides that she actually wants to become part of the real world as an actual person. Again, it doesn't have to make sense. It's just part of the movie.
huh.
How a doll can become a real person. It was a good movie. I mean, I've seen it once, so me explaining the basic plot of it is not gonna be the greatest thing in the world, but I liked it. I thought it was good.
Mm.
There were
You
times.
probably
There were time. Go ahead.
you probably would have gotten more out of it if you'd gone to see Oppenheimer right after. Or wait, is it supposed to be? Are you
Maybe
supposed to watch Oppenheimer before or after?
before because you're depressed with Oppenheimer, and then you go see Barbie, and it's supposed to be a little more lighthearted, which it actually wasn't as lighthearted as you would have thought at the end. So another, obviously, I already said spoiler warning for it. At the end of it, uh, after the Barbies kind of take over, um, because you're following Margot Robbie's Barbie throughout this movie, so it kind of seems like maybe Barbie Land missed the message of the movie, but like Margot Robbie as Barbie, her character development is what you're supposed to follow in this movie. But in Barbie Land at the beginning of the movie, it shows like it's always perfect. Everything goes right. Everything's great. There's no problems. Every night is girls' night. Like it's just perfect world. Um, and then problems start to set in. So Barbie obviously is a doll. As the movie goes on, she slowly starts to feel emotions, which she's never felt before. She starts crying at one point. She's never done that before, you know. So it is kind of nice to see as she starts to really turn into a human, more or less. From this made up doll, to someone that now can feel and experience life basically. Um, they have a character in it who is the creator of Barbie, and she kind of helps Barbie mesh into the real world. She's like, hey, there's like the scene where they're standing there talking to each other, they're holding each other's hands, and it's kind of like just a white background room, you know. And she's like, I want to be a human. And so they have this like kind of a semi-emotional scene where you know, they're talking and there's some things said that, can be seen as emotional and all. And then they have a bunch of like flashes that Barbie's supposed to be seeing of like basically kids playing and like just the joys of life basically. And it's like this is something that she's never felt before, but now she's able to experience. So it wasn't all just laughs, but I mean it's not going to make you cry. So, and it's not going to make you feel probably depressed like Oppenheimer, but which have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Hers like 3 hours long or something.
Gosh. Mm.
I've heard spoilers for it, but I mean, there's not. I mean, I don't really know necessarily what would be spoiled of it, but like just more about like the actual movie than like obviously what happens. Like we already
Well,
know what happens,
isn't it a
but
like I would say isn't it like a it's supposed to be like a historical fiction movie? Kind of like
yeah. So from what I've heard, okay, and this is not saying I have not seen the movie. So if someone's listening to this and like, no, you idiot, that's not what happened. I'm sorry, I haven't seen it. From what I've heard is like it takes place in like three different time periods, more or less. It's like what happens before the nuke, the time while during the nuke or whatever, like while they're making it and all, and then his life after the fact. Um, and so like, that's like the three stages of the movie, and so it's kind of like I guess a somewhat biography of his life or whatever. I also heard that apparently some of the movie was shot in black and white.
hmm.
Um,
So you
as
think it's
like a
kind of a biopic?
yeah, from what they were saying, I don't know if there was anything blatantly said as to why it was shot like that, but I think they said certain scenes are shot in black and white and certain scenes aren't. I think they said that like the ones that were shot in black and white were supposed to be like this is specifically what happened. I think I'm not sure. I will give the movie a watch eventually. I just don't think that I'm going to end up watching it in movie theaters. Um, but it sounds like it's still going to do pretty well, whether I go see it or not. So,
Hmm. So one thing I do want to talk about too is Futurama.
oof. Oh, I did see that they're the Hulu ad for it.
Yeah, Hulu brought back Futurama, and well, when the day the day this podcast episode comes out, the second episode will be up. The second Hulu episode will be up. I watched the first
Have you?
episode today. It I will say it was good. It was good. It felt like Futurama, but it
Mm-hmm.
was so meta. It was like it was so meta.
Now,
So,
I have
but
already I have already seen the end of Futurama because that was the first thing that I watched of Futurama. If I were to jump ahead and watch what they're newly releasing, am I gonna really miss much? Or I mean, I'm obviously gonna watch the rest of it, but like if I were to watch what's coming out now, is it gonna be that big of a deal?
Um, not really. Or at least this episode what didn't really have much of an impact. Um, basically, but this whole episode made a ton of jokes about like the whole pretty much the whole episode was making fun of the fact that they brought back a TV show that had been canceled for 10 years.
Has it been 10 years?
That's what they said in the show. I'm actually not sure, but it was Futurama's last season in 2013. I know it's okay. I know its first season was in 2000, but
2013,
it
2013 was 10 years ago?
yes,
David, you're blowing my mind over here.
it's
Don't tell Katie,
2023.
because don't tell Katie, she'll feel old.
Uh huh. Um.
I knew she graduated somewhere around there. So I think I was in sixth grade. Sixth grade. Sorry, I'm spiking the mic, but I was in like sixth grade last time it was 2013. Well, that makes sense. People don't come to this podcast for things to make sense. I actually don't know why people come to this podcast. Not gonna lie. Let us know at Down the Rabbit Trail YT, and be sure to join us
Yeah.
next week on. Oh, David's going again.
On yeah, it ran from 99 to '03 on Fox. Then it ran from '08 to 2013 on Comedy Central. And then
I forget how old the show is because like it's a cartoon, so like you don't really see
well,
that.
okay. There's two things to it. One, it's a cartoon, and two, it's a futuristic setting. So technology, because like okay, you look at The Simpsons or Family Guy, and like the early seasons, like they had like VHS tapes and flip phones and stuff. Now they have smartphones and they talk about streaming and all this stuff. So you can tell because it's a modern setting. You can tell when
Yeah.
when the episode came out. With Futurama, it's a futuristic setting.
Yeah.
None of this. Well, okay, you can't because
Although,
they do make
although
90 a lot of
Fried,
90s and early 2000s jokes, but still, yeah.
yeah, but I mean also Fry does it's 99 to 2000. That New Year's is when he gets trapped in the capsule, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they do reference it in that, at least in that sense, but it's also like, oh, it's in the future, so you don't really take much thought in that. I just forgot that it was that old. Is
Mhm.
all the original cast still around to do the roles?
Um I think so. I think cuz well, okay, I know Billy West came back.
Does it at
But I'm
least
pretty
sound like it's the original?
I didn't notice any voices that were different.
It's a lot
Like I
easier
said,
with voice acting because there are some really good voice actors out there that can like do a voice and you think it's someone completely different. Like I was listening to a Star Wars podcast a couple weeks ago, and they had on the guy who voiced Obi-Wan from the Clone Wars, and I know in the Clone Wars series he doesn't sound exactly like Ewan McGregor, but for
mm,
the couple lines that he said on the podcast, if you were listening to it, the couple lines that he said in the Ewan McGregor voice sounded like Ewan McGregor. Like he
mhm,
sounded not. I mean, if you're just kind of listening to it, like it sounded really close. And like a lot of times, like those voice actors, they can say things in that tone. I think the guy who like played Tarkin in the Clone Wars, like he does a really good job with it too. He sounds very similar, and with a couple lines, you can almost like it sounds exactly the same. It's
mhm.
harder when you do it for an extended period of time, but there are some really talented voice actors out there.
Yeah. But yeah, at least the main three like I said, Billy West, Katie Seagal, and John DiMaggio came back. So so John DiMaggio is the voice of Bender. Katie Seagal is the voice of Leela, and then Billy West is pretty much the voice of everyone else.
Mm.
No, literally, Billy West voices Fry, Professor Farnsworth, Zoidberg, Zap Brannigan. I'm probably missing a couple more of the main ones, and then he voices a whole bunch of like one-off side characters. Like he literally voices like pretty much voices that entire show. In fact, when he auditioned for that show originally, he auditioned for every male voice on the show.
I mean, that's talent, honestly. Because
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure if you like, if you listen to, so a while back I saw a clip of I don't remember the guy's name, the voice actor's name, but it's the one that brought to life all the Looney Tune characters.
Mel
Um,
Blanc.
do you know what it? Huh?
Mel Blanc.
No blank. So if you listen to his voice, you can hear all the different characters like in it, you know? But if you're watching an episode, you will not think, like I mean obviously like you can tell little similarities here and there, but as you're watching a video or an episode of like Looney Tunes or something like that, it doesn't take you out of it. Like they sound unique, you know?
Mm.
And it's like just voice actors are definitely underappreciated because they're obviously voice actors. They're not acting on screen, but I think in a lot of ways they have to be you know sometimes even better because all they're acting through their voice. you know like you're not able to I mean obviously I know a lot of times they get all into it, but it's different with the voice than it is with just acting. And most of the time they're not as well known as a lot of the mainstream actors are.
Mm. Well, unless it's like a lot of the modern movies where they're casting like actual like A-list actors for
Yeah.
voice actor, like okay, like Chris Pratt was one of the first ones to do voice acting, so I'll give him a pass. Well, no, I won't. But like I said, at least like Chris Pratt was early on because like he did Emmett in the Lego Movie pretty early on before a lot of this stuff. But like now like you're getting like
Mhm.
Tom Holland and The Rock and all these other different celebrities doing voice acting roles. It's like
Yeah.
what happened to
You,
actual
you, you,
voice actors?
as I say, there's a lot of like they are extremely talented, and because they're not like a well-known face, they're gonna get looked over because people don't care as much about that. They
Well,
want to have they want to have
well
a
also
mainstream actor on their movie.
also imagine this too. Like imagine how nice it must be to be a voice actor. Like okay, you I don't think that voice actors get paid as much as a lot of like bigger like actual act like on-screen actors
Yeah.
do. But like you can even be famous, a famous voice actor, and for
Hmm.
the majority of the time, if you go out in public, you're not going to get recognized. And there's
Yeah.
something to be said for that. Like
That's
there's
why we do a podcast with no cameras. I say into the camera.
yeah, yeah.
But you also have to think about this. Like, okay, I understand like the publicity you get from having a big name actor on your movie or show or whatever. But like, you're talking about how with Futurama, you have one guy who voices how many different characters? Yeah, you
At
probably have to
least
pay him a
four.
little bit more, but it's a lot less than having to pay four different voice actors to voice four different characters, you know?
Hmm.
Like you can run into a lot. I mean, obviously, you still have to. Yeah, there's a lot of animation and stuff like that. But like, still, it comes out. It's probably a lot cheaper to have one actor for four different roles, you know, and they all seem individual because their design's different, their voices sound different. But
Now, okay,
you
I
know,
will understand. I do kind of understand how like for the main three cast wanting three different voice actors for the main three.
Yeah.
But like, okay, honestly, like right now, I don't think anyone else but John DiMaggio could voice Bender. But honestly,
Yeah.
if Billy
It's a
West
pretty
had voiced
distinct
him,
voice.
but if Billy West had voiced him from the beginning, I don't think like just listening to Fry and Zap Brannigan and uh, Zoidberg, those are all so
Hmm.
distinct voices. I don't think that I think
Yeah.
Billy West could have voiced um Bender too, and it would have been distinct enough.
Yeah. I mean, I think he could have done the job well enough. Now that it's been done, this way, you're used to it,
Mm.
Um, but
Like I said, I don't think anyone else, as it is right now, I don't think anyone else other than John DiMaggio could voice Bender.
yeah, yeah, probably my favorite character.
Mm. There's a lot of
But
good characters in Futurama.
yeah.
But anyway,
Well,
we're getting close to the 2 hour mark somehow. Um,
somehow we spent we spent like what looked like about an hour and a half on Phineas and Ferb, so you know, close to
I
it.
was about yeah.
I
Well,
mean, I know we don't. I know
this is
there's
probably only going to
portions
end up
of it
being
that,
about. If we stop
yeah.
right now, it's probably only going to end up being about an hour and 40 minutes because we had some technical
Hmm.
difficulties earlier on. But yeah,
Yeah, I usually base it on like we typically start this around 6 in the evening and we run till about 8, and we may not always get usable footage that whole time, but you know tends to be close to it. So,
yeah.
well, do you have anything else to say?
Nope. I think we're pretty
'Cause
good to head to an outro.
Because I've already talked about a bunch of nonsense in this episode, and so I don't know if I can talk a bunch more nonsense for the rest of the episode. I mean, I could probably figure out something to say, but I don't really know if I can think up enough interesting things for people to want to listen to the rest, 20 minutes of the episode by just saying a bunch of nonsense stuff into the mic. You know what I
You're
mean?
rambling.
I am. That was intentional. Was it not obvious? I think I made it obvious where you didn't have to say it. See, David, by saying it, you're basically just saying to the audience that they're idiots and they needed that to be called out to them. I did not say that, however, and I think everyone who listens to this podcast is smart. Well, except for me in the future. But, I can call myself out in the future when I listen to this podcast and be like, hey, you're an idiot. Because, I can tell myself that I'm an idiot. Am I rambling too much for your liking, David? Because I'm trying to get us to 2 hours. Like, I feel like the 2 hour mark is just kind of where we're going with this. I feel like if we don't get to the 2 hour mark, we didn't just quite, we just didn't get there this week. Just didn't get there. It's always the
Well,
mark. It's always the goal.
I think we can go ahead and head on to an outro.
Well, it's good that we can go ahead and hit on to an outro because I feel like we're done with everything that we've, need to say with this episode because we've already gotten everything out of the way with Phineas and Ferb, and there's not much else new with me, and I don't think there's much else new with you. So, do you want to cut me off anytime?
Let's head to an outro. Well, explorers, that's all the time we have for today.
And we hope you enjoyed this week's episode.
Let us know what you thought in the comments down below, or you can DM us on Instagram at DownTheRabbitTrailYT.
And make sure to tell your friends. And join us next week as we go down the thing. It's the wrong one. Join us next week on the Trailcast.